What's good, everybody? With Shuri getting moved from pool 5 down to pool 4, I wanted to come out with the ultimate guide on how to play Shuri. She is my absolute favorite card in the game, and I honestly kind of believe that she's the best card in the game. I wanted to go over my favorite combos with Shuri and my favorite decks with Shuri. I've actually made a bunch of different YouTube videos about Shuri decks, so I'm gonna link those at the end of the stream and in the description below so that you can go check them out. So the first Shuri combo that we're gonna talk about is, of course, the classic. You get Shuri out on turn 4, you drop Black Panther by himself on turn 5, then Arnim Zola destroys the Black Panther, and you get 2 copies of that already double powered Black Panther, who then reveals again and doubles his power again. It's a combo that I'm sure a ton of you have run into in the past, and I really just love it. It is one of my favorite combos in the game, even though it is a little telegraphed. Now, if you don't want it to be telegraphed, you go ahead and you instead add Red Skull to the mix. Now, Red Skull is a 30 power card. Yes, he does have the negative of giving your opponent's cards +2 power. However, when he's sitting there at 30 power, you're typically not really that concerned, especially if you were able to drop Shuri onto Kamar Taj. So then Arnim Zola comes in and cuts Red Skull and throws him to the other 2 locations. You just got to make sure that the math works out right and that your opponent doesn't have too many cards and the +2 is not going to benefit them too much. It is a play that I've caught many opponents off guard with, but the card I like playing the most alongside Red Skull is gonna be Taskmaster, because when you drop Red Skull out there at 30 power, you don't have to Arnim Zola him across the board. Instead, you can just copy his power without having the negative ongoing effect if you use Taskmaster. And the deck right below me is a perfect example of how that could work in a deck. This deck helped me to reach infinite this season. I was basically using Zabu on turn 3 to lower the cost of Wong and Shuri, who I would play on turn 4 together. Now all of a sudden, Shuri is actually quadrupling the power of the card you're dropping. You go ahead and you put out Black Panther, who starts out as a 32 power card, or you drop Red Skull, who starts out as a 60 power card. Now you decide what you want to do, what's best for you. Do you want a Taskmaster or Arnim Zola on turn 6? My opponent never knew which one I was gonna pick, what I was gonna do. I was gonna spread a lot of power, and a lot of times their Shang-Chi missed. Another really cool card that Shuri combos with is Zabu. Zabu is going to make all those 4-cost cards cheaper. As you know, well, Shuri's a 4-cost card. You're gonna play Shuri, and then depending on the deck style that you've got, you can play a really good 4-drop that's going to be huge when your opponent is not expecting it. You could do a card like Typhoid Mary. Yes, her ongoing effect is definitely detrimental, but when Typhoid Mary is a 20 power card that you can then copy with Taskmaster on the next turn, that -1 power doesn't really hurt too bad, as long as Typhoid Mary is at least 20 power, if not 40. But if you have him, Atuma is perfect with Shuri. You use Shuri, then you use Atuma after the Zabu goes off on turn 3. Now all of a sudden you got a 20 power Atuma that you dropped into an armor lane, and you're pretty much a lock to win that location. But that seems really obvious. Of course, use the highest power 4-drops to make Shuri give them more power. Duh. Well, an underrated combo with Shuri is actually this Omega Red right here. I used this deck a lot to get to infinite as well. A big combo that I was really enjoying running was actually dropping Dracula into one of the locations, and then coming out on turn 6, I would play Shuri, and then I would play Omega Red into that Dracula lane. Now all of a sudden, Omega Red has 10 power. Dracula is gonna cut your biggest card that's left in your your hand, hopefully, and it's going to give you the edge of having more than 10 power at that location than your opponent, and Omega Red's gonna spread the +4 power across the board. For a card like Omega Red that really needs a ton to work out in order for him to be a useful card, Shuri is the perfect combo card with him. Another card I like to use with Shuri was Crossbones. A lot of times I would have a big card in a location that was holding it down, but I was pretty sure my opponent was gonna Shang-Chi. They snapped on that turn, whatever it was. Then I'd play Shuri out, and the next card played would be Crossbones into that location. My opponent would come in, kill Shang-Chi, but all of a sudden 16 power Crossbones showed up and took over that lane anyway. A 12 power White Queen is amazing. A 12 power Rock Slide. Any of these cards is going to be big time when Shuri gives them that extra boost. It's just extra power that you otherwise wouldn't have had in a location that your opponent doesn't see coming. Zabu makes that possible by lowering the cost of all those 4-cost cards, allowing Shuri to come out of the deck unseen, unscathed, and all of a sudden she's boosting a card up big time. Now let's move on to a couple of good control combos with Shuri. Most of the time, Dr. Octopus ends up losing a location. You play him out on turn 5. You do pull out all your opponent's big cards, but Doc Ock ends up losing that location. It kind of hurts a lot. It prevents your opponents from getting their combos off for sure, but most of the time you just literally have no means to win that location. Well, now all of a sudden Shuri makes Dr. Octopus a 20 power card. A large percentage of the time, Dr. Octopus is actually winning that location and your opponent's combos are completely shot. Shuri into Doc Ock is one of my favorite ways to disrupt my opponent's play. And another cool control disruption card is gonna be Arrow. You get to use Arrow to pull all their cards on turn 5 over to a different location. Most of the time, you're not concerned about Arrow winning that location because it's a way to just kind of control things. However, with 14 power, Arrow is going to be good enough to beat whatever your opponent plays a bunch of the time when you do this, and it just makes her that much stronger. That's a combo that I never see anybody playing, but Shuri into Arrow is absolutely astounding. And the last sort of control card that I wanted to mention is actually kind of a little bit of a meme. It's not gonna help you that much, but it is gonna be really funny. I've done it a few times, especially when I first got Shuri. I Shuri'd Hobgoblin and made him a -16 card and sent him over to my opponent's location. It completely ruins anything they were building over there. You probably don't need to make him -16 power, but it is just really funny and really goofy, and it definitely hurts when they see it happen. And the last set of combos that we got here are kind of unique and allow you to potentially win a game in dramatic fashion, and we got Captain Marvel and Vision. If you play out Shuri on turn 4, making Vision a 14 power movable card almost kind of locks your opponent out of a game on turn 6. If your opponent has Shang-Chi, they're gonna have to try and worry about where you're gonna move Vision, and a lot of times I end up not moving Vision at all, and they end up Shang-Chiing the wrong place. But having a movable 14 power that can get into locations that you otherwise couldn't, like Sanctum Sanctorum, Vision is so valuable after he's Shuri'd. Captain Marvel works the same way, but at the end of the game, this 12 power card is going to shift herself to another location and win you that game. Most of the time, your opponents are going to be absolutely shocked that you put a 12 power Captain Marvel into play. The reason that I lean a little more towards Vision is not because he has an extra point of power, but it's actually because I think a lot of times the opponent is going to want to Shang-Chi the 12 power Captain Marvel, but for Vision, they don't actually end up knowing where you're going to move him and if you're going to move him and whatever. It makes them outthink themselves and kind of screw up a little more. Either way, 12 power getting moved to any location that's going to win the game is an absolutely beautiful thing. Of course, there are a ton ton more combinations that Shuri works well with. You can even use her for something crazy like Professor X, a 6-power Professor X on turn 5 after you play Daredevil on turn 2 usually is enough to lock down that location. If you stay with the Daredevil theme, you also got Gamora, who starts at a 14 base power after you use Shuri and still gets the +5. There are literally so many endless combinations that Shuri works well with, and a lot of times your opponent just doesn't see the fact that you can duplicate that power if you end up using a Taskmaster to copy that card, or you use Arnim Zola to cut it across the board. So I want to go over a few of my favorite Shuri decks real quick. This one right here, like I mentioned earlier, helped me to reach infinite. I really love this deck because it has the Zabu Shuri Wong elements, as well as the Red Skull Taskmaster combo and the Black Panther Arnim Zola combo that I mentioned earlier in the video. It gives you a ton of different ways that you can win the game, and your opponent is just going to be trying to wrap their head around how much power you dropped on turn 5 and if you can spread that across the board, or did you just do something dumb and win one location. I can't tell you how many times this surprise won me extra cubes because I snapped on an early turn when I had a big time combo in my hand and I had no cards on the board, and my opponent just snapped back because they saw that I had not played anything. At the end of the video, I'm gonna link a YouTube video that explains this deck in more depth, but in the description of this link, I'm going to have links to other videos I've made about Shuri decks in the past, because I've got a bunch of them on this channel. Another really good one is this deck right here that helped me to go from 95 all the way to finish off the rest of Infinite. This deck allows you to take advantage of Zabu and a couple of those Shuri Zabu combos that I mentioned, including the Omega Red Dracula move, where we double Omega Red's power and Dracula ends up carrying that location to spread Omega Red's power across the locations. Again, I've got a YouTube video on this. I'll leave that in the link description below. Below me is another really cool kind of Shuri Disruption deck that I like to play around with. It's got that Dr. Octopus combo, it's got Arrow, it's got Vision. You can use Shuri to boost any one of those 3 cards. The Heimdall is in there because if you go ahead and you pull all the cards into the right location with Dr. Octopus, you can then use Heimdall on turn 6 to shift all the cards over to the left 2 lanes. If you're not already winning it with Dr. Octopus, it gives you a couple of new options that maybe you didn't consider before. You got Cosmo in the deck for 2 different purposes. You can use him with Dr. Octopus if you don't think that you can win a location, but you want that extra 10 power. You can drop him into the Cosmo lane, or, you know, Cosmo just ruins your opponent's combos and doesn't let them reveal anything in that location. It's just a whole bunch of the best disruption cards all mixed in there, with Shuri able to boost up a couple of really good 6 drops that benefit from getting a power boost, or 3 cards that are going to disrupt your opponent's turn and it's not going to allow them to win the location because Shuri just doubled their power. Unfortunately for this deck, I don't have another YouTube video about it, but if you want to see that, let me know in the comment section below so that I can go ahead and make a video based on this deck because I really like this one. And one last deck that I might as well go over real quick. It is not completely focused on Shuri, of course. It is just a straight up ramp deck that you're trying to get Electro and Wave out as soon as humanly possible, preferably on turn 3. If it starts to become past turn 3, you're gonna have a rough time winning games. But once you get them out, you're going to then set up some of your big time combos. I'm not gonna get into all of them. I do have a video that goes over all this, but in this deck, a big time all-star is gonna be that Shuri Panther Zola combo. It's worth bringing up because this is one of the 3 decks that really got me to infinite this season. Those are the most important Shuri combos in my opinion. They are the best ones to work around with. Of course, you can substitute some of those cards and make them work, but you get the general idea of what cards are important with Shuri and what works. I only went over a few full-fledged decks on this stream. Go check out the links in the description below, or check out this one that I'm going to leave on the side of my face so that you can go and jump into a really great Shuri build that helped me to reach infinite. If you enjoyed the content, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you.